Gym Candy, Part 5, Chapter 2. When I stepped out of bed Saturday morning, I expected to have to crawl to the bathroom. All those carries meant that many hits, and a running back pays for every hit with an ache somewhere. I'm not saying I didn't hurt at all, because I did, but the pain wasn't half as bad as I'd expected. I went downstairs to eat. My dad was sitting at the table waiting for me. Next to my cereal bowl was the Seattle Times. He had it open to the high school sports page. The headline jumped at me. Mick Johnson runs wild. Below the headline, in smaller type, were the words, record-shattering performance. Read it, he said. Go ahead. I read the article and then reread it. I'd gained 312 yards and had scored 6 touchdowns. The list of school records I'd set or tied made me woozy. Most yards in a game, most touchdowns in a game, most yards per carry. You're on your way, my dad said. You're back up this game with more big games, and by the end of the next year, every college coach in the country will know your name. He paused. Who do you play next? Garfield. Are they any good? Their offense is, but their defense is weak. They beat Roosevelt 41-31. He smiled. Sounds like the perfect team to play. Keep it rolling. At school, everybody had heard about the records, and it changed the way people looked at me. Before the Franklin game, I was just another jock. Now kids and even teachers went out of their way to say hello. Right before lunch, I met Kaylee in the hall. You were great, Mick, she said. You were amazing. Did you see me waving to you? I was just to the left of the band. Yeah, I saw you, I said, afraid to tell her I'd been so focused on the game that I hadn't once looked up into the stands. During lunch, a reporter from the school newspaper interviewed me. I felt like an NFL pro, answering questions about how it felt to hold records. I even answered like an NFL pro, saying stuff like, records are meant to be broken, and it's really a tribute to my linemen. At the end of the interview, the school photographer snapped a photo. After school, as I was heading to the football field, I heard my name shouted. I turned. It was Natalie Vick. Girls' volleyball season starts tonight, she said and edged her voice. I saw that, I said. Kaylee's on the team. She's the only sophomore. That's great, I said. Good for her. She's a starter. She stood, hands on her hips. So will you be at the game? I wasn't expecting the question. Maybe, but I've got practice, and then I got to the gym for weight. You are so stupid, Mick, Natalie said, interrupting. Do you have a clue what a great person Kaylee is? Every guy in this school wishes he was in your shoes. What about Brad? I thought she was with him. Are you really that dense? We needed somebody for volleyball when you stopped coming, so I called Brad. Kaylee doesn't like him, not the way she likes you, anyway. But she's not going to go chasing after you, Mick. She was at your football game cheering for you. Now it's your turn. I'll be there, I said. A door had opened that I'd assumed was closed. I promise you, I will be there. So Mick is getting all this praise, all this attention at school for his record-breaking game. Life is going great. Then Natalie Vick tells him, hey, Kaylee's game is tonight, right? She's a sophomore. She's starting. You need to be there. So it's confirmed to Mick that Kaylee, the girl that he has a crush on, also likes him, right? So he confirms with her best friend, yes, absolutely, I will be at her game to cheer her on. All through practice, Carlson was watching me extra closely, looking for any sign that I had a big head, so I busted my gut on all the drills. A couple of times he nodded to me, and at the end he singled me out. Way to work, Mick. When practice ended, I called the house and left a message saying I was going to the volleyball game and wouldn't be home until late. Then I grabbed a sandwich at Subway and headed straight to Popeyes to get my workout done, because I wasn't skipping that. When I walked into Popeyes, Peter held up the high school sports page for the Seattle Times. Way to go, Mick, he said, and the guys behind the counter and the lifters in the gym clapped for me. He took me to the trainer's room for a free massage. I'd always thought massages were for rich women vacationing in Arizona. This massage was nothing like that. The massage guy would find tight muscles and then knead them until they came loose. It hurt almost as much as lifting, but when he finished, I felt 1,000 times better. After that, Peter led me through a long stretching session, focusing on my back and my legs. Then he gave me a spreadsheet of my workouts for the week. They were both shorter and easier than they'd been. I asked him why. The games will take a lot out of you, he said, and remember, you're off the juice. But I have to keep strong. Mick, trust me, this will be plenty. I took the paper from him and headed out onto the gym floor. For the first time, I didn't follow what he'd written. The drops were too great. I wasn't going to give up so quickly. If he had me lifting 150 for something, I pushed it to 160. If he had me doing 15 reps, I forced myself to do 18. And I did it too. I don't know that I've ever worked harder or longer, but I did it. I didn't finish until nearly 8:30, and by then the place had emptied. As I toweled off, Peter came over. "I know you want to stay clean," Peter said, his voice a whisper, "but there's some new stuff I've got hold of. It's called XTR. That guy in the Tour de France. Not Lance Armstrong, but the guy after him. The guy who had the title taken away. It's what people think he used. He was way behind. He gave himself an injection of this stuff, and he won the thing. It would be perfect for a sport like football. It would give you power right on game day when you most needed it." "Not interested," I said. "No more steroids." Right, he said. "And I respect that 100%. I just wanted you to know about this stuff." "Okay, you told me." So Mick has promised Kaylee, or rather Kaylee's friend, that he will go to the volleyball game that night and support Kaylee. But before that, he's got to go to Popeyes and get his workout in. And when he goes, Peter gives him his workout schedule like he normally does, but he's cut back on everything that Mick is supposed to do because Mick is no longer on the steroids. But Mick won't accept that he needs to do things lighter, and so he pushes himself to do more than what Peter's workout calls for. At the end of the workout, Peter pulls him aside and is like, "Hey, I've got this new stuff, XTR. It's supposed to be really great." But Mick has already told him, "Hey, I don't want to be on steroids anymore." So Peter doesn't really listen to him, right? He's still pushing, even slightly. "Hey, like, here's some steroids if you ever want them. Here's some steroids if you ever want them." And so, it's almost like he doesn't respect Mick's wishes, right? He keeps pushing them on this kid. I went out to the Jeep, my stomach in knots. I'd lied. I was interested in the new stuff. But then I thought, what athlete wouldn't be? If Drew heard about it, or Deshawn, their eyes would light up too. Being interested doesn't mean you're going to use it. Okay, so again, now this has been placed in Mick's brain. Before that, he wasn't thinking about it, right? He was off the stuff. He was going to feel better about his body. Now, okay, Peter has planted the thought in his mind about XTR. I started up the Jeep. The clock lit up. 8:45. Suddenly I panicked. The volleyball match. If it was a blowout, the whole thing could be over before I made it back to school. I shoved the Jeep into gear and headed straight to Shill's Hole, driving fast. I had to catch at least the last game. If I could see Kaylee play, then I'd have something to talk to her about. And if I started talking to her, there was a chance we could get back to where we'd been in the summer. When I pulled into the school parking lot, the gym doors were shut. I parked in a bus zone, jumped out of the Jeep, and started to run to the gym. I was about halfway when the doors burst open and people started pouring out. The game was over. I spotted Drew and Deshawn. I was about to call out to them when Natalie turned toward me. Our eyes met and she turned away. My stomach dropped. She'd tell Kaylee I'd missed her game, and that would be that. The door would be closed again. I dragged myself back to the Jeep, drove home, and went upstairs to my room. I wanted to get in bed and sleep, but when I stepped inside the door, I saw a note pinned to the bulletin board above my desk. "Check out the den, Dad." I turned around, went back down 2 flights of stairs, opened the door to the den, and flicked on the light. For a second, I didn't notice anything, but then I saw it. The Seattle Times article framed and hung in the center of one of my walls. It wasn't bare anymore. What happened next, I can't explain. It was like what had happened the day before tryouts, only worse. A huge lump came to my throat and my whole body started to shake. I wanted to bawl like a baby. I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out. "You've got to fight through it." That's what Peter had said. I climbed back to my room and took a shower. At first, all I could think was how unfair it was. I'd quit using steroids. Why was the black hole still there? Then the warm water settled on me, the shaking stopped, and the lump in my throat went away. Or at least it went down. I climbed into bed, flicked off the light, pulled the blankets over my head, and after turning this way and that way over and over, fell asleep. When I woke the next morning, I lay still for a moment, afraid, but the darkness was gone. Once again, Mick allows, the workout to interfere with everything else. And once again, he's missed out on an opportunity to make friends, have a girlfriend, be a part of a community because he's so focused on his weightlifting. And he's disappointed because he realizes he's missed his chance with that. All of his friends were at the game, and Kaylee will know that he wasn't there. And when he goes home, he sees his article. His dad has hung it up in the den because remember, down in their den, their basement area, his dad had saved 2 walls for Mick to put his articles and his trophies on. And Mick sees that, and instead of being elated over the fact that his dad has framed and hung up the article about his performance at the game, he's really upset, and it causes him to spiral into this dark depression. And so the question is why, right? Shouldn't he be happy about seeing that? But perhaps he knows he didn't earn that, right? It wasn't him doing that, or he doesn't know how much of it was him setting those records and breaking those records, and how much of it was the substance he was taking.